please subscribe to help you and your motorcycle perform better.
I want to be a rider, I want to have a motorcycle, I want to get into this sport. So there are some stages I would like you to go through first. If you want to join the sport, keep watching. So you purchased your bike, it fits you properly, you've got all the stuff on it you need to be comfortable, you bought the right bike, allows your feet to be planted, awesome. Part A, you've done all the ergonomic concerns, you've addressed all of that, you've done a good job. So the next piece to look at, your first consideration is suspension. The first piece of that is then and then. So to get this done, you have two choices. You can go to a professional, or you can DIY. All the resources we've put online with Total Access and YouTube, you can learn to do this yourself. It's not a big deal. The other part that is pretty evident here is that I haven't let you ride the bike yet, because there's some very important information here. So our general sag range is 30 to 40 millimeters front and rear. What that allows the bike to do is sit flat, even. We don't necessarily want a bike tilted forwards or tilted backwards. So unless you've used that tape measure that you took to the dealership and used on every bike you sat on, we now need to use that again. So we need to assess this. You can watch the videos, you can learn how to do it. It's not difficult. What's difficult is interpreting the information. So let's short circuit that curve for you. So if you have, and it has happened, because some bikes are so stiff and some riders are so light. If you have 10 to 20 millimeters of sag, which is rider plus static combined, that is a danger Will Robinson moment, because that means when you sit on the bike it barely moves. So what's going to happen to you over a bump? Instead of the suspension doing this, the suspension is going to do that. So the ride characteristic is going to be extremely harsh. If you have the ride characteristic is going to be exactly the same, because you're using so much travel. It's going to lift over the bump, and you are not going to be left alone for the suspension to do that. That's why we're looking at this 30 to 40 millimeter range, because it's somewhere around 30% of the total travel that you get and is available to you. These numbers tell you that something is wrong. So you are too stiff and too soft. So then the question becomes, can it be fixed? All that video content we put out is, can it be fixed? You can go to a professional, you can do it yourself, and you can figure out where you're at and can you fix it, which is awesome if you want to do it yourself. That's why we provide all the resources in Total Access. So make your choice here. If you're confused and you're not really sure, and you don't trust the person holding the tape measure giving you the information, then have a professional give you a baseline. Record all settings. There's videos on how to do that as well. Once you've got that baseline put into the motorcycle, now you are free to go ride, because it's the right bike for you. You are comfortable sitting on it. It is correct and set up appropriately with spring tension and damping, if you have damping, for rebound and compression. And now the bike is optimized to you. So I'm going to say this to you. When you pull up at the airport and get a rental car, don't you dare touch the seat and the steering wheel, and you drive it for the period of rental. Are you going to do that? No, it's stupid. Why are you going to go out on a bike that has come from the showroom floor and just go ride it? Who's it set for? Why are you going to do that? Well, if you've taken control of your environment and fix the motorcycle before you buy it, so all the parts are on it before you take delivery, why won't you then do the setup on it to get it right? Because all this is doing is empowering success in your riding and learning experience from this point on. Because if you are jumping straight to the street, we need to mitigate as much as possible your vulnerability. And the myth that, oh, I'm too slow, I don't need to set my suspension, is ridiculous. It is absolutely absurd. This is step number one before you get on the bike. So make your choice. Figure it out how to do it. Use our resources. Get total access if you're that kind of person. And if you're not, like me with electricity, go to the professional, get your baseline set, record all your settings, and now you're ready to learn. One of the hard parts for us here is actually to control this weight. Depending on the bike you purchased, if you bought, for example, a 300cc bike, that weight can be very light indeed. Or if you decided to go up and buy a bigger motorcycle, now we've more weight that we have to manage. So part B is, we're guessing that you've got your feet on the ground. And if you've got your feet on the ground, can you let the bike go side to side while your feet are here and control that weight side to side and keep it in a range where you're comfortable so that the bike is physically moving side to side while you're static. If you've chosen a bike where you're a ballerina and you're on your tiptoes, then this exercise can't happen. You're not going to be able to do it. The biggest part about having your feet on the ground is more control. The next piece, which most people are going to go, what? How much fuel's in the tank? If you've ever had the opportunity where your feet is on the ground to whack the bike, hip check it, and then let the fuel move around in the tank and feel the bike go all over the place, it has a profound effect on the way the bike works, because all that fuel is sloshing forward or sloshing backwards or in the corners moving around in the tank. And when you're learning, because you don't have the confidence of speed to manage all of that yet, because that's coming, this scares the living daylights out of people, but they don't know what it is. My bike's wobbling. I always make everyone I teach, fuel tank has to be full all the time. Whenever possible, get it back to full. If you slosh fuel around, it's going to make things learning very difficult. So controlling weight is then going to be done here. You can't get into an environment where there's a ton of distractions, where your eyes are going to lock up and your conscious mind is going to literally freeze because there's too many sensory inputs. We can't deal with it. So initially, when you get your new bike, or you're new to you bike, or you're doing an MSF course, where are you? A controlled environment, no other traffic, no other people, nothing coming other ways. All we're trying to do here is control variables, which means you have less to think about and less to do. What are you going to learn? Well, just the same as you did in the dirt. First thing is clutch control. But with a road bike, generally, that's going to have to be done with throttle. We can't move the idle up and get the RPMs up to let you learn that and stop. You're going to have to learn to use the throttle and the clutch simultaneously. And this is where, if you've gone this direction, this can be extremely frustrating, and it can be physically very painful and involve injury if you can't do that. Learning stop-start drills, and you're only going to use first gear, requires you instantly to coordinate eyes going forward, hands for movement, ear for engine noise, and then the sensation through your fingertips of the bike finding the bite point. If you are learning this on your own and you're alone in a car park, that's a no-no. Absolutely not. You've got to have somebody with you, whether they ride or don't ride. Because if you do fall over, you may get trapped under the bike and somebody's got to get that bike off you. Under no circumstances do you do any of these things by yourself, which is why MSF courses are really great, because there's a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience, a controlled environment, and a set learning pathway that you can follow to do that. Once you understand this and get rolling, the shifting piece actually comes a lot easier. But with this of stop, start, stop, that's your first test. By far the hardest thing that you're going to learn with a road bike, because you're managing all this weight and size and bulk. There's no turnaround here. It's just start, stop, start. Then you're going to have to turn the bike around. Now you can either ride it around, or you can get off of it, you can turn it around and go the other way. There is no embarrassment about getting off a bike and turning it around. There's a huge amount of embarrassment in struggling to turn around and fall over. There is no ego here. There is just a very honest, sincere, and deep respect for what you're trying to learn with something that is far generally bigger and heavier than you. In the start, start, start drill, get to the end, figure if you're going to ride it around and start again, or if you're going to get off and push it and line it up. I don't care. You have to honor who you are and where your comfort level is. So part B is getting into this environment where you're safe and secure with at least one other person, or doing an MSF course and learning here the basics of just getting the bike moving. It's much harder to learn on a road bike because you have to learn the throttle and clutch at the same time. So all of us can go back that drove a manual and remember how long it took us to actually store the energy on our brain to hear the engine, hear the clutch bite, and then continue on. How much patience that took to get the car rolling. Allow yourself the same amount of patience for this very first exercise. No problem. Got it down, very comfortable, can start and stop the bike. Generally that's always going to be done in first gear. So now we've got to introduce shifting, first to second, then stop, turn around, repeat. We also need to have a defined space so that you know you can only go this far and you've got to stop by that point. The defined space needs to be generous. You have a big motorcycle. You're generating a lot of forward movement. You're learning brakes. So you won't have braking efficiency. You won't have that level of control that an experienced rider has. If we have our start line, we have our shift point. Maybe that's 15 meters. That takes us to second. Then we have a dotted line, which is stop. And then we have a generous distance of X meters here until that ends. So therefore that has to be true here, that is a dotted line. And we have our distance on this end of X. And you can repeat that drill. First, second, stop. Turn the bike around or get off of it. Do it again. That buffer here has to be at a point where the rider stopping is comfortable. And again, when these courses are done in parking lots, there's a lot of space. So you can define that with a cone here and a cone there, which sets the boundaries of those limits for them to aim to, which is easier because their eyes can lock in. And that's very helpful. Now you're learning throttle, clutch, shift, and brake, and speed. 2, 4, 5 things in one go. Now we're really truly multitasking, right? So at this point, that's a lot to ask somebody to get into, especially if we're moving into second gear on a motorcycle. Well, that could be 30 to 50 miles per hour, depending on the nature of the bike and depending on the engine size. So we have to show some awareness here about setting a speed boundary potentially, right? Or setting those cones where you shift in this zone, and then there's a cone here to signal the shift, and another cone, instead of a stop there, of decelerate. That might be what you give that person. So I want you to start here. I want you to go to second gear. You reach this point. I want you to decelerate and stop. That's a lot different to decelerate. It's a less drama. I want you to reach this point and stop. So again, choose the language in your head or what you're coaching somebody with in order to get them through this pretty significantly dangerous time, because with more speed can come more injuries. So again, you need to keep yourself in a confined environment where you can learn a lot more. Even if somebody's helping you, you define this environment for yourself. What are you comfortable with? You decide what the length of that zone is. For part B, figuring this out gets you to the point now where you can shift. You can get up to a reasonable speed, so now you're getting the sensation of speed, but you're also coming to a very controlled stop. No, you're not ready for the open road. Here's a Kleenex. Get over it. We're still in the parking lot or car park. Now we have to learn the turning drills. So again, that diameter of the circle may be 25 meters. And you go around the outside this way, and then you switch up and go around the outside that way. Now, because a motorcycle for the road is much heavier than a dirt bike, speed is required, because as soon as you lean, if you're not going fast enough, the bike will fall over. So a big radius circle allows you to basically go from 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock, and that's enough. That will get you around the circle either direction. You'll probably be somewhere around 20 miles an hour doing that drill and going around the corner. If you're at 20 miles an hour, it's better generally to do it in second gear, because it'll pull and it'll give. First is too jerky, and generally once you're over 10 miles an hour, you don't need first anyway. So at that point, leveraging second gear and going around in a circle makes sense, because you understand that when you get off at 12 o'clock, either side, and you bring the bike over, getting the throttle on keeps it online and keeps the lean angle constant. You've got to understand then, throttle equals speed, and speed defines lean angle. So when you get those two concepts, maybe you can go around this circle now. Once you've understood this, maybe you can do 25, then you can do 30. Learning one way is pointless. Go both ways and get to a point where you're very comfortable, you're controlling the lean angle with your throttle. We understand lean because when we go to the road may have a stop sign in a 90 degree. The road may have a curve. The road may have a curve that comes back on itself. So understanding how to use the throttle to sustain your lean is really important, because when we get to the street, which is the next part, the environment that we see should dictate how much throttle we do or don't use, and it should also dictate as and when you use your brakes, because your visual of that comfort zone that we put into part B becomes a recognizable distance. Master this drill, and I mean master it, where you're very comfortable going both directions. There is no rush to get out into the war zone of the road, especially in an urban environment. Having your base skills mastered in being able to shift, being able to stop, being able to support the bike at lean with speed, all of those fundamentals you have to have 100% down. And once you've got them down, now at that point, we have a base skill set where ergonomics is set on the bike, our suspension is set, we are ready to go.